Hello, I'm Kiley Holmes, and today I'm going to be presenting my case study. Background information. KM, her pronouns are she, her. She's 24 years old. She's a female. Ethnicity, she's African American. Her occupation, she works at Target and a bank. Her relationship status, she's dating. She's been in a relationship of 2 years, and the client was referred by herself for therapy. The presenting issue. KM came to counseling to seek treatment because she expressed that she feels depressed about where she's at in her life currently and what the future holds for her. She describes that she has low self esteem, intense feelings of sadness, excessive sleep, and a decreased appetite. The client feels that her family doesn't give her the support she needs because of her toxic behaviors. In addition, her family's behaviors have caused her to have issues trusting people and isolating herself to prevent being hurt by others. The client explains that her feelings are starting to interfere with her work and personal relationships. She wants to utilize healthy coping methods to change her thinking patterns. Case conceptualization. Background information. The client KM is faced with feelings of being sad because her parents are not being supportive and providing her with the love that she wants. She was prescribed Prozac in the past by a former counselor to help her regulate her mood swings. And KM has noticed that she has been dealing with severe feelings of depression and engaging in bad coping behaviors that she used to partake in, which brought her to counseling today. This stems from her being in a toxic environment and not being able to express her mental issues with her family because her family feels that talking about mental health and your emotions is taboo, which causes the client to feel dismissed and shut down. The client's family has a history of mental illness as well. Strengths of the client. KM wants to put the work in to change how she views her life so she can achieve her goals and not let the environment dictate how she lives her life. She has started implementing coping strategies into her routine. She liked journaling, which can aid her in processing her emotions and decrease her feelings of stress. And the client also wants to improve her self esteem and her confidence as well. She also wants to not think negatively and think positive. Limitations. KM has low self esteem and utilizes a negative self talk. She also withdraws herself from her family to not have to confront her feelings about what troubles her. She engages in avoidant behaviors like sleeping all day to avoid her parents and not hear the bickering and um arguments within her family. Her anxious thoughts and fears hold her back as well from doing the things that she wants to do, like go to work or hang with her family. Hang with her boyfriend or friends. Case conceptualization using CBT. Continued. KM is suffering from severe sadness and negative thinking patterns, which is impacting her life at home. The presenting issue. From cognitive behavioral therapy, KM is depressed and experiencing changes in her mood because of her low self-esteem and distorted thinking patterns, which she feels like she's not good enough or withdrawing herself from others and prioritizing her self-care. The client's negative cognitions about herself, behaviors, and not being able to regulate their emotions result in the client being depressed. All three of these concepts align to where the client can feel hopeless or anxious about certain situations. CBT supports the idea that the client is experiencing faulty thinking, thinking patterns, affecting how they handle their emotions. Kayla is experiencing low motivation, hopelessness, and avoidant behaviors because of the client's trauma and emotional distress. For example, I will use CBT to restructure the client's negative take on her exhibiting toxic behaviors from her parents into her relationship with her partner and friends. Reframing thoughts could involve getting the client to see how their behaviors differ from their parents, which can motivate them to make necessary adjustments. The theory will help the client tackle their self-perception, cognitive distortions, emotions, and behaviors. The following are examples of what the client is reporting about her emotions. The client's self-perceptions. The client states that she isolates herself so others won't feel her negative energy. She doesn't want others to feel bad for her or not want to talk to her because of the way she behaves. And she feels that it doesn't make sense to say how she feels because people don't listen. Her cognitive distortions. I will not amount to anything because of my toxic environment. I'm not my parents' ideal child and will never be enough. The client says that these comes from her parents' lack of support and encouragement. She also expressed that her parents expressed their negative thoughts about her and pick arguments with her. Her emotional responses. She's feeling hopeless. She's anxious. She's fearful. The behaviors exhibited. She's avoidant. She sleeps for multiple hours to not deal with her family. She isolates herself from others. She spends time away from her family and stay in her room. Diagnosis and rationale. Based on the client's symptoms, KM would be diagnosed with major depressive disorder because the client is enduring feelings of emptiness and hopelessness stemming from her environment that is impacting how she looks at life. The major depressive disorder criteria from the DSM-5-TR. A. Depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day, is indicated by either subjective report, for example, feels sad, empty, or hopeless, or dealt with over the years, or observation made by others, appears tearful. For example, KM experiences feeling sadness about not being enough and not knowing what steps to take in her life because of the trauma she dealt with over the years from her mother. B. Markedly diminished interest or pleasure in all or almost all activities most of the day, nearly every day, as indicated by either subjective account or observation. This can include her not wanting to hang with her friends or her boyfriend, or not wanting to go to work because she's depressed and feeling hopeless. C. Significant weight loss when not dieting or weight gain. For example, the change of more than 5% of body weight in a month, or a decrease or increase in appetite nearly every day. The client details that her eating habits are not very good, that she's barely eating because she's feeling extreme sadness. Insomnia or hypersomnia. This consists of the client sleeping excessively throughout the day, sleeping for hours. E. Feelings of worthlessness, or excessive or inappropriate guilt, which may be delusional nearly every day, either by subjective account or as observed by others. Treatment plan. Short-term goals. Recognize her negative thoughts and restructure them with a positive one. Practice affirmations in the mirror to increase her self-esteem. The client can say sayings to herself like, I am enough, for example. Establish coping strategies to help reduce stress, like mindfulness techniques or breathing exercises. Long-term goals. Reframe thought processes about not being enough and feeling hopeless. Engage in socializing with others and working on relationships. We can change her thought processes from not being enough to I am enough, and I'm doing the best that I can. And engage in socializing with others can be spending more time with her friends, taking a day out the month to hang out with her friends and just have fun. And also build her relationships and try to break down her walls and not have trust issues. Interventions. Cognitive restructuring. The technique pinpoints the negative thought and changes it to a balanced thought. It allows the client to cope effectively and decrease their emotional stress. Like changing her negative thoughts of not being her parent's ideal child to a more balanced thought. Behavioral activation. The intervention motivates the client to engage in activities that interest them, which results in a positive mental space. The client says that she loves to read, journaling, she likes to go walking, which I think that would be great for her throughout the week to do. One day out the week, and it'll become routine, so the client can be in more of a positive headspace. Cultural considerations. Kayam is an African American woman who explains that her family doesn't think it's appropriate to talk about mental health. They feel that it's taboo and is not accepted. They don't believe the client should go to therapy for her mental issues. This hinders the client from being able to talk about the emotions she's experiencing with them. The client feels like she cannot go to her parents and really talk about what has happened to her throughout the years with them and how she feels. The client's cultural identity impacts the case because KM's outlook on mental health can mold what she associates mental health with and how she goes about dealing with her mental disorder. The thoughts from her parents and from her background can influence her to not focus on her mental health or get help. And their cultural background affects KM's thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. As the helper, I let the client know that I understood how the stigma in the African American community can influence her desire to seek treatment. Validating KM's emotions and what she's gone through can help strengthen our trust, can help build the rapport, and allow her to break those walls and open up to me. It's important to talk about how trauma from their history and distress surrounding their race contribute to their mental health. I will also help the client deal with the shame that's coming from her parents about therapy and talk about boundaries that could be put in place to decrease the stress from the relationship. The client can establish boundaries with her family by letting them know what things are acceptable and what aren't, and what needs to change or happens for their relationship to continue in a positive manner. Ethical implications. It's vital to explain confidentiality to the client and why I must break it if any harm is done. If the client talks about harming herself or others, I will have to report it. During our session, I explained to the client that what we talked about stays between us and when I must report a matter. In addition, I opened the floor for the client to ask questions if they wanted to know more about confidentiality or what the counseling process looked like. Like, for example, the client asked me about confidentiality and if anything stays between us, which I let her know that everything does, except when in the cases that harm is intended to be done or is thought of. Also, being culturally competent and aware of the client's cultural background. Like knowing about the client's background, like her being African American and the stigma with mental health and the feelings associated with it. And knowing about the different social cues and concepts from her community. I can use interventions that align with the client's culture and address any feelings associated with their culture. Like the client's religion, for example, can be incorporated into the sessions if that aligns with the client's background. I explain to the client what cognitive behavioral therapy is and the techniques I will utilize to help achieve their treatment goals. I let the client know about the theory and how we will work to restructure her thoughts, challenge those thoughts with a balanced thought, and how we can do so with these techniques and using coping methods like mindfulness and breathing exercises when she feels overwhelmed. These are the session 2 video clips. And these are my references. Thank you.